So why trees? Why are they important and why do we care for them? So they're important to increase the canopy of our overall neighborhood, especially in those that lack a tree canopy. So the importance of them are not only for them to be planted, but also for them to thrive. And some of the important reasons why we plant trees is to, one, improve overall air quality. There's been a lot of studies connected to the fact that lower tree canopy can have a drastic effect on the air quality of the community. And that also ties into heat reduction. The more trees you plant in an area and the more you increase the canopy, the more you're able to reduce the heat that is caused in our urban areas. And also conserving energy. If your house was surrounded by trees, you would use a lot less energy in terms of air conditioning and also creating that natural shade. It also captures water. Today in LA, we are experiencing rain. It's been so exciting to see the rain continuously pouring down in our cities. So the more trees we have, the more we're able to capture that water in their tree wells and keep it for ourselves and not let it wash off. Also provides food. We are able to, a few times a year, we're able to give away fruit trees to certain communities. So we're able to increase the amount of food that they grow in their neighborhoods. So it provides food for a lot of the food deserts that we have here in Los Angeles. And also it provides natural mulch. A lot of our trees that are deciduous lose their leaves during winter. So we're able to pile that back up and use it as mulch. Michelle will touch a little more on mulch shortly. And one of my favorite parts about planting trees is the habitat it creates for wildlife. We did a planting in South Los Angeles, and I had done a visit to the site about 5 times before we actually planted. And the minute we were taking the trees off of the truck, we started noticing butterflies were stopping by. And, you know, right before they were even in the ground, we saw more birds and butterflies coming over. So it's almost instant, the attraction to wildlife and the habitat that you're creating for them. And also within that, there's community revitalization. And so one of my other favorite parts of planting trees in communities that don't have very many is people start bragging about their trees and start, you know, looking down the street like, oh, that's my tree. I planted that. I'm caring for it. And a lot of the times they tell us no, they additionally don't want to plant a tree, but the minute they see it down the street and their neighbor has one, they want to increase it. So people start coming out and start chatting about trees. And also the therapeutic benefits of them. The minute you come outside and you touch the soil and you're connected with them, whether you're planting the tree or simply providing care, you start feeling the effects of being outdoors and experiencing, you know, your nearby nature. We don't necessarily have to run off to the forest to experience the therapeutic benefits of, you know, the natural world. So, and beautification. If your street lacks trees, this is your time to add the beauty that you'd like to see. If you want the trees that flower, you want evergreens, here's your chance to design your community to create that beauty.
Love
And
that
so
story
today
about
we're
South
going
LA. Thank you, LB. That was
to,
good.
no
It
problem.
just reminded me, that I had this wonderful planting in South LA as well. And there was a wild parrot. Somebody's parrot actually got out. And after we planted the trees, the parrot went right over to the trees. It was great. It was good. So yeah.
A new branch. Yeah. So
Yeah.
today we're going to go over to how to care for trees. And so don't worry too much about taking notes. We have amazing resources online, including how to care videos, how to plant, and so you're able to go after this presentation, click on the links and just learn a little bit more or review some of the things you might have not catch through the presentation. So just relax and know that we have the links provided for you shortly.
Okay, so now we're going to get down to the tree. Here we go. You might have an opportunity to be looking at a tree right now out your window. You may have one in your mind on your daily walk. But a lot of times what will happen, almost without a doubt, unless you're in the forest, you are going to see a lot of weeds and grasses growing right up to the trunk of the tree. And in some cases, it can actually look really pretty, right? You've got this green grass and it's really pretty. Sometimes people want to plant flowers around the trunk of their tree. And while that there's a certain aesthetic that comes along with that. We really want to encourage you to actually take those out, because with weeds or grass or any kind of plant material that hovers around the base of the tree, what happens is that the tree then gets less water. So the roots of those weeds, grasses, or flowers are much shallower than the roots of the tree itself, which we hope are quite long and deep. So one of the very first steps of tree care is observation. What's going on with my tree from top to bottom? And when you look at the bottom and you notice in some areas, when we're doing tree care in various areas of LA County, depending on the soil type, that either, it could be hard as heck to get those weeds out, or it could be very easy with a shovel. And so what we're encouraging you to do is very gently, if you have a shovel, to a very small shovel, or some, like we call a trowel, or something that can go under the very top layer of the soil, you want to pull those weeds out and remove them, and either put them in your green bin. Yeah, put them in your green bin. Unless they're seeding, then you want to put them in your black bin, because if it's a non-native plant, we don't want that to spread around. That's a lot of information. We can get to that later. But right now, we just want you to have a really clear visual of take those weeds out, and you're going to get an area, which we're going to get into in a minute when we get into berming and mulching. You want to get an area around the trunk of the tree that's equivalent to its drip line, if at all possible. So where the canopy ends and drips down into the grass, you want that area to be free of weeds so that the tree can absorb absolutely the maximum amount of water that it can. So it's really beneficial to the tree to clear that out because of the shallow root systems. Anything else you want to add to that, LB?
No, just focusing on the berm, which we'll touch on shortly, and make sure it's rebuilt and free of grasses and weeds. So what we also find at the base of newly planted trees are what we call suckers. So they're the new growth that happens at the base. So we would like to catch that as soon as it comes out. So you're able to use just your regular household pruners that you have around. And you want to make sure you cut as close to the tree as possible and not do anything blunt. And make sure the base of the tree is clear from those suckers as well as weeds and grasses.
And we have a fabulous video on our website regarding pruning, if memory serves me. So if you're concerned or hesitant to do any of your own pruning, Google it, take a look at our videos, and do it with confidence. That's what I encourage you to do. Okay, berming. This is a big one here at Tree People. If you are a beginning tree care person, if you're an avid gardener or a master gardener or whatever, you've seen probably these dirt circles around a properly cared for tree, or even a properly cared for tomato plant, or sunflower, or something like that. And what that is it's a space that goes out from the tree trunk, and it goes out of that area, that goes out around it, a circumference around the tree, again, guiding it with the drip line of where the canopy drops and the water drips down into the soil. So, excuse me, that's your drip line. And so you want to build out you want to make sure your soil is out to that line, and then you get to build your berm. And that's when you take, so we call a berm, sometimes a good visual, I know LB likes to call it a donut, I believe. That she's going to talk to you about a little bit later. I like to call it like a moat. I think it's because I have a young boy in the house and we talk about castles a lot. So we build a moat around our tree, and it's got some depth to it. So it's not just a tiny berm of soil, it's actually quite thick. And what that does is, and if you look to our example on the slide there, you'll see that circle around the tree, and then the raised soil at the where the water's edge ends, is the berm itself. And it's got some depth to it, because when we pour the water, when it rains, or when we're watering our tree, it will hold the water directly above the roots. And so it ensures that the roots get the type of moisture that they need. You can also think of it as an active cistern in a way. It's almost like a rain barrel, you know. It's an open spout that captures rain or water, holds it there, and then slowly integrates and slowly drains into the soil and the roots below, giving it a really deep, drenching drink of water. Critical. Hands down, such a critical point is keeping our trees really with the perfect amount of moisture. And I'm just looking at my notes here, and I think I've hit some of the major ones. So get rid of those weeds, get rid of those flowers, get rid of that grass, build that berm so you can have a really sturdy place so that the tree gets to have all that water all to itself.
So stakes and ties, most of the trees we plant in the city that are typically 15 gallons, some 5 gallons needed, but for the most part, it's the big sellers that we want to stake. They come with a nursery stake. So they come with a stake that's connected to the trunk of the tree. So we take that away because it actually harms the tree and it does not let it grow on its own. It depends on the tree. So it's almost like a cast on the tree. So we initially remove that stake. So when you're doing tree care events, you'll see that the tree is already staked. So I have a large lodge pole, whether it's 8 to 10 feet tall on either side of it. And it has these plastic ties that we use to help the tree stabilize itself to grow to be big and strong and thrive. So when we do our tree care events, we like to come and adjust these stakes and ties. A lot of the ties are exposed to several weather elements that either weaken them or they simply fall off. So we adjust the ties, make sure they're sturdy. And with adjusting the ties, we're also looking to see if this tree is big enough to lose its training wheels. So we're able to remove the stakes and remove the ties, and the tree's ready to be on its own and it's independent. So we adjust the ties, make sure that the tree still needs the ties, the stakes, and if it does not need them, if the tree diameter is greater than the stakes, then there's no point of it being staked. So at that point, we wiggle them back and forth, we get rid of them, we cut the ties off, and now the tree is independent and ready and strong enough to grow. Stakes and ties are something we are all across the forestry department super passionate about. I literally have a tree outside of my house right now that is staked, and it is gigantic, and it has stakes and ties, and it's what keeps me up at night. I've sent out several emails to staff to see if they can remove them. So I'm super close to going and doing it myself. It's so important that we don't keep these stakes and ties on our trees. As you can see the picture in the slideshow, it creates a lot more damage than it does helpfulness for the tree once it reaches a certain height. So stakes and ties, adjust them, remove them, and just look out for them.
I think that if you talk to any staff member, especially in the forestry department and probably in education as well, we will all giggle when we talk about stakes and ties because it is something that really does make us crazy. We walk around with, in the dark and we free trees. And while we don't recommend that everybody do that, that's my disclaimer. If you're trained, we do have a tendency to free the trees because it is something that can completely and totally prohibit their growth. So Elizabeth, that you just made me laugh.
It is so satisfying. It needs to be in those videos. So satisfying, removing the stakes and ties.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. And then filling in that hole, right? After you replace the nursery stake that the tree came to you in, you want to make sure part of tree care is making sure that you fill the hole in where you pulled the nursery stake out of completely back with compacted soil so that any water then that is captured in that hole cannot then rot the trunk of the tree. So in the urban environment, we have a lot more stressors that we're dealing with on our trees. In the forest, there's so many trees. They tend to, figure it out. I can't think of the word right now, but you're probably tracking on what I'm saying. It works. Nature, right? It's nature. It works. But in the urban environment, it's a little trickier. There's a lot more going on. There's kids. There's cars. There's got kids climbing my tree in my front yard all the time. So I want to make sure that, including myself, I want to make sure that that trunk is stable And so in order for us to really ensure that we've got our young trees stabilized, we've got to get that nursery stake out and plug that hole. So I'll just transition right into water. Speaking of water, I get a lot of questions from a lot of folks, whether it's a workshop, a class, or my friends saying, how do I know when to water my tree? There's a bunch of indicators for your tree, if it's had too much water or not enough water. And sometimes all you have to do is look at the leaves, and the leaves will tell you. Whether it's a yellowing leaf, so oftentimes that can mean that it's being overwatered. If it's got brown edges, oftentimes that means it doesn't have enough. But a simple indicator, if that visual makes you nervous or you're not quite sure of it, go ahead and just take your finger. I have kind of small hands, but if you take your finger and you go about maybe 3 or 4 inches into the depth of the soil, near the root ball, near the trunk of the tree, maybe a foot away from the trunk of the tree. If it's dry, water. If it's not dry, don't water. So you really only need to test about that deep, because based on how hard the sun is pounding, really that top layer is what's going to get evaporation. But if you go just beyond that top layer and you go 3 or 4 inches deep, you're going to get a really good sense of when the tree needs to be watered. So let's say the tree needs to be watered. What you do is, and I apologize for not being able to show you any really great visuals, but if you look on the slide to the left, or however you're looking at it, you'll see a couple of buckets. And those buckets are about 5 gallons each. They are 5 gallons each. And we recommend a really slow pour of a younger tree, anywhere up to about 5 years old. We recommend a really slow pour of water from one 5-gallon bucket over the other 5-gallon bucket. You don't have 2 5-gallon buckets, go ahead and use your hand. You're basically looking for a waterfall effect, so that when you go, a lot of times, let me finish that sentence. So that when you go to water your tree, you don't create deep holes in and around the tree roots, right? So sometimes we're in a rush. We're like, oh gosh, I need to get this tree watered like ASAP. I'm late for work, gotta go. So I take my hose, pour it in really hard, and it can create holes. So you kind of want to just take a minute, fill that bucket up, and just do it whenever you have time, preferably in the morning or at night, because during the day, there's a lot of evaporation that occurs. So you really want to slowly pour that water over your hand or over a shovel or over another bucket, create that cascading effect, and slowly pour that bucket into the space that you've created, the berm and the space around the trees, after you've weeded and after you've built your berm. And what we do recommend, because we can't tell you through this or any other workshop that we do what type of soil you have, this is where observation comes back. You need to observe your soil. How fast is it draining? What's going on with my soil? So you want to make sure that an entire bucket, 5 gallons, is completely absorbed, or in the most part, absorbed into the soil before you pour your next, because then you know that tree's had an opportunity to take a really deep, proper drink of water. So that is, I think probably all we really need to do to talk about. You don't have to have filtered water, by the way. The tree will drink anything. So just make sure it's got moisture.
And one of the questions that we keep getting in regards to water is the cost of watering a tree. And so we have a formula and has figured out the cost per year. So it's about a little over $5, about $5.50, $5.60. And so it equals basically 1 flush of the toilet, or 1 cup, 1 latte, or carton of eggs, whatever works in your head. But it's relatively cheap to water a tree at this rate throughout the whole year. So about 15 gallons once a week, and a little bit more over the summer equals to a little under $6.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I find that this also at our events, this is a great point when you're doing tree care to involve kids. They love watering trees, and they can put their little hands out to slow the water while you pour it on top of their hands. And they just really revel in that piece, because who doesn't love playing around in water, especially if you're a kid?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll get to your question at the end, but let's finish up first.
So now we get into the fun part. This is mulch. For you guys who are not familiar with mulch, mulch is just natural materials, whether it's little pieces of sticks or leaves or palm, and they're natural materials you put around the berm of your tree to help retain moisture, to help it stay healthy, to help it create a nice little layer of like healthy soil that helps break down and give the tree nutrients. So for every tree we plant and we care for, we always make sure we top off that mulch donut with sprinkles. So that's where we use our mulch materials. It's usually 3 to 4 inches of mulch material per berm, and we make sure it's nice and lush all around. And we also go back and pull the mulch away from the trunk of the tree because we don't want that to create moisture on the actual tree trunk. So if you can envision, it's literally a donut. You got beautiful soil, and then you do your sprinkles on top, and the hole in the middle is empty. So we have mulch on every tree. Mulch is magic. Everyone in our forestry department knows mulch is magic. There's never no such thing as too much mulch. And some of your trees that are deciduous and lose their leaves throughout winter give you mulch. So there's no need to go and get more. You rake up the leaves, put it around the berm, and magic happens. There are some resources in the city of Los Angeles where we're able to pick up free mulch, so you can also find that on our website, and it lists that. So mulch away. Don't be shy and be generous to your trees.
And I would thank you, LB. That was great. I'm gonna excuse me for when I refer to Lizbeth. That's our nickname for her is LB. So if you hear me say that. I think that one of the things I always say to people, and kids their eyes seem to get really big, is I say, you know, mulch is like vitamins for the tree. It's like eating your vegetables, because basically what mulch is when it breaks down, it becomes soil. And that's, you know, so when we're walking in our forests or we're walking in our parks and we see leaves on the ground everywhere, we're going to come back in a few months, depending on the weather, it will have broken down and turned into the soil. And one of our greatest, without getting too political, but one of the greatest things we want to continue to do is take care of our soil. So another great thing about mulch, if I may add, is that mulch really does keep the roots of your trees warm when it's cold outside, and it keeps the roots of your trees really cool when it's really hot outside. So your roots are going to fry if you aren't able to cover them up. And like Lizbeth said, we really encourage residents, no matter where you are in LA County, to just collect the natural leaves that fall in the tree. When I was doing a lot of work in South LA, we would encourage the neighbors, and they loved it. We would just take all the beautiful leaves that would fall in the street and just rake them up, and then we just used them to mulch all the trees. So it's right there, it's free. They're dropping from the trees that are in your neighborhood versus transferring mulch, which sometimes could potentially transfer pests. So really look around your neighborhood and see what you have. The resources are right there for you. And then to keep it from flying away, just add a little water, and that'll help hold it down.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to wrap up on? That is all of our slides for our presentation. Anything before we go?
I would just like to encourage everyone to come out to one of our events as soon as we're able to start planning events and get them up on the calendar. Come out to a tree care event, come out and plant a tree with us and see what everything we're talking about looks like in real life. There's nothing like experiencing it and planting a tree on your own and caring for one.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yes, we're all excited.
A lot of fun.
That day when we can all have volunteer events again. So I saw a question in the chat. Please, this is our moment for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. The first one, Michelle and LB, is when you're pouring the water, do you pour it next to the trunk?
So you can pour it.
Oh, go ahead, LB.
You can pour it.
No,
the goal is to fill up that berm. So you can put it right next to the trunk. It doesn't harm the tree because either way it's being absorbed. So you're able to water the trunk if you want. The thing we strongly discourage is to water the top of the tree with water hose. Like our trees are young, they need that deep, deep drink. So the goal is to fill up that berm.
Yeah. And we really are talking about trees that are anywhere, correct me if you have different information, LB, but really we're talking about trees that are anywhere from 0 to 5 years old, right? So, I mean, I think of it like a child, so I go from 0. So from 0 to 5, really, really important to be attentive at that stage of the tree's life. Certainly after the tree's 5 years old, make sure those stakes are all gone. We can get into stakes if there's questions about that. But yeah, and then watering, of course, is critical at any stage, especially if you can see that your tree needs it. But we really do, our organization really focuses on trees that are 0 to 5 years old.
And if you create that berm that we were talking about, it's going to fill up. So the whole thing will start to fill up, whether you do it by the trunk or not.
That's right.
Great. Any other questions? Feel free to type it into the chat. Give it a few more seconds for questions. All right. Well, you can
We love questions.
always email us if you have questions at learnathomewithtreepeople@treepeople.org. And we're also hoping that you'll send us pictures and videos of you doing tree care via social media or at treepeople_org. Hashtag Green Quarantine is where we're kind of doing all of our fun learn at home activities. We want to see everybody in action. Check out that website as well, www.treepeople.org/learnathome. And you can really check out all the videos that are happening, the activities for kids. You can share that with your friends, your families, your parents, and we'll all together collectively get more knowledge around trees and tree care. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so much, Michelle and Lizbeth. You both have been awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
And we will have
It's really been fun.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you soon.